Hey guys, it's Jessica. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be counting down my top 10 horror books. I have always enjoyed a scary book. I think that I started reading my first Stephen King book in the 7th grade. Yes, I did. I read Carrie and did a book report on it because our teacher said that we could read whatever we wanted, but I don't know that she was expecting that. And it scared the pants off me. And then I read It, I think in 7th or 8th grade, and just kind of continued on with a lot of that classic, 80s and 90s horror. And then I didn't read a lot of horror for a really long time. So what I have for you here is my current top 10 horror recommendations. These are all books that I have read that I've really enjoyed. I will tell you that my taste in horror is going to lean a little bit toward the quietly creepy or spooky side of things more than to the gory and violent side of things. Although there's probably some of that in there too, but my taste in general is probably not toward that end. So these are probably going to mostly be books that are pretty safe for you if that's something that you don't enjoy. So of course, I couldn't make a top 10 list without starting with a couple of honorable mentions. And the first one that I have for you is actually going to be a book that I don't think is super scary, but I think is presented so well that I have to call it out. And that is Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix. I really love Grady Hendrix. He is probably my favorite horror writer at the moment. And Horrorstör is one of his earlier books, so it's a little bit over the top, a little bit silly in places, but man, you guys, this book is just straight up the IKEA catalog. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Welcome to Orsk, not IKEA. We can't say IKEA for copyright reasons, but I mean, it is very much laid out just like an IKEA. I don't know. I just really love it. I think if you're going to read this book, you owe it to yourself to definitely read a physical copy. I don't think that the ebook of this would do it justice in the same way. So I'm going to read you a little bit of the description of this one. And it says, something strange is happening at the Orsk Furniture Superstore in Cleveland, Ohio. Every morning, employees arrive to find broken Keurig bookshelves, shattered Glans water goblets, and smashed Liripip wardrobes. Sales are down, security cameras reveal nothing, and store managers are panicking. To unravel the mystery, 3 employees volunteer to work a 9-hour dusk till dawn shift. In the dead of the night, they'll patrol the empty showroom floor, investigate strange sights and sounds, and encounter horrors that defy the imagination. So, a little bit of a haunted house kind of story, but within a very, very different setting. I think this is something so unique. It's the thing that really brought Grady Hendrix to my attention because this is so unusual. Has a great sense of humor. I highly recommend it. So this is going to be in my honorable mentions. The next book I have is probably not a traditional horror novel, but I found it to be so deeply unsettling and frightening that I can't not recommend it. And that is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is the story of Mary Cat and her sister and her uncle who live in a decaying family estate and the mystery of what happened to the rest of their family. It's just extremely unsettling and strange, and you wonder the whole time what's going on. It has a very gothic atmosphere, and I personally am a huge fan of Gothic and Victorian literature, and although this is not set in that time period, it has that kind of feeling. And I think if perhaps you're looking to get into some Shirley Jackson, but you're not looking for something extremely scary, this is more, I would say, unsettling. But I really enjoyed it when I read it, and I highly, highly recommend it. So now we are going to count down my top 10 books. And again, these are just my own opinions, and I have put them in an order, but these could definitely move around. I'm not saying that number 1 is definitely 10 times better than number 10, because that is not true. But we are going to start with number 10. And number 10 on this list for me is going to be We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. This book seems like it's pretty polarizing. It scared me to death. This is not really a haunted house story in the traditional sense, although it appears from the cover that is what you were going to get. This is a story of a woman and her partner who have taken this Victorian home to renovate it themselves. And one night, when one of them is home alone, there's a mysterious knock on the door and someone is standing there saying, "Hey, I lived here growing up and I was just in the neighborhood with my family and I sure would love to show them the old stomping grounds. And she doesn't want to let them in, but she feels like she's being ridiculous if she doesn't let them in. And of course, as a reader, we are sitting here and we are screaming, do not let these people in. And then it goes from there. This is an extremely disorienting book. The nature of reality and what is going on in the story, these are all things that the author is playing with. There are also hidden clues and codes and things for you to try to solve, pieces to put together, things that don't make sense within the book itself, the story itself. I again would recommend reading this one in physical form because I feel like you're going to want that for those places where there are special little Easter eggs that you'll find. This story actually began as a story that was posted to a subreddit that I have vague memories of perhaps having read. I like to scare myself with creepy things on the internet all the time because living in my own old Victorian house is apparently not enough for me. I need to be scared of other haunted Victorian houses. This book is really, really interesting. I think that if you're someone who needs all the answers, this might not be the book for you. But if what I've said sounds interesting, I would highly recommend giving it a try because I thought it was something really different from any other story that I have ever read, especially any kind of haunted house story. And as I said at the beginning, I thought it was so scary. Highly recommended. At number 9, we have Let the Right One In by John Lindqvist. This is a Swedish horror novel that is set in 1981. The main character is a bullied 12-year-old boy named Oscar who befriends a mysterious girl who has never seen a lot of the things that you would expect a girl to have seen before, but who is very good at things like solving Rubik's Cubes. And she only comes out at night. This book has an extremely unique setting and feel, and the setting itself feels like such a part of the story, and also the relationship that you see between Oscar and his new friend. It's not just a scary story. It's mysterious, it's eerie, you don't really exactly understand what's going on. I thought it was so good. And yes, there are films, I think more than one of this, but I think the book is better. And I would recommend reading the book. It's probably one of the less scary books on this list. So if you're looking for something that's going to be creepy, but not absolutely terrifying, I would probably recommend this one. And I also just think it's an excellent, excellent book. Next, I have What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is the first book in T. Kingfisher's Sworn Soldier series, and this particular volume is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And it is a fantastic book. Again, it's not super, super scary, but it's definitely eerie and atmospheric. We are following a character named Alex who has returned from war, changed, with a little bit of PTSD. Actually, one of the better portrayals, I think, of PTSD that I have seen in a book. And they rush to the home of their childhood friend upon hearing that she may be close to death. And when they get there, they find a lot of mysterious things within the house, mysterious growths, the animals are acting strange, and they feel that it is their job to try to save their friends and to discover the secret of what has happened at this place. Very dark, very, very perfect for fall. The third book in this series is actually coming out this week as I film this, and I'm looking forward to getting to read that, in which our main character actually travels to the United States. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think this is pretty much a perfect novella, and it's gonna be better if you know the Edgar Allan Poe story, but it's not an exact retelling. So I think you could read it without having read the Edgar Allan Poe, but that's a short story. So I think you could read both of them and it wouldn't take you that long, and it's definitely worth it. I really love T. Kingfisher, and this is one of the best of her horror books. At number 7, I have The Haunting of Hill House by Miss Shirley Jackson, who I already mentioned once in the honorable mentions category here. I am someone who loves to read their favorite authors over and over again, and this is definitely considerably scarier than the book that I mentioned earlier. It is the story of a haunted house. I'm sure that you know the story of The Haunting of Hill House. It's very famous. There are at least 3 films. There is a Netflix show that is extremely loosely based on the story. It is very much the story of a haunted house that may or may not be haunted. And it's a very classic setup. It's the story of 4 people who have come to a house to investigate whether there is something wrong with it or not, and what happens to them when they are trapped within the very, very mysterious Hill House. I think it's so, so good. If you do want to watch a film version of this, I would recommend the older one, not the one that was, I think it came out, would it have been the late 90s? I'm trying to remember. I saw it in the theater, so I'm trying to remember when I would have been old enough to see a scary movie in the theaters. I wouldn't recommend that one. That one, I think it has Catherine Zeta-Jones in it. Don't recommend that one. And the TV show is not particularly like the book, but I actually really enjoyed it. So, but the book is so scary and such a perfect piece of frightening literature for the fall. And at number 6, I have something very different, and that is Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. And you may be thinking, that's a weird pick. But it's, it's kind of not. It's a little bit of a different genre. I would describe this book as cozy horror. And I know that sounds crazy, but I will tell you it has plenty of gore and entrails and things like that within the book, but it's also about a very, very sweet romance between a monster and a woman. And I thought it was so, so, so fantastic. We are following the monster Shi Shen, and all she really wants to do is take a nice nap, but lo and behold, humans have invaded her lair to try to kill the monster, as they always do. And so she's been forced to eat them. You know, it happens. It happens. And so on the run, she finds herself meeting a lovely woman named Harmony, who does not realize that she's a monster, because did I mention that somehow Shi Shen's a little bit of a shapeshifter, and she can turn herself into something that I suppose looks like a person by taking body parts and kind of creating human body parts out of them. I don't know, it's weird. The description of that will get you. And it's a very sweet love story, and it's very much about family trauma and choosing our found family over the people who raised us if perhaps they don't deserve that. And I don't know. It's a very different book. It did win, I think, the Nebula Award this year, and I think that was well-deserved because I think it's something really, really unique and different, and I highly recommend this one, especially if you are looking for something that has a little bit of a happier message. But as I said, it does have some stuff in it that you're going to want to be aware of, so I would look up some content warnings probably if you're not really a gory kind of person, but I thought this was just fantastic. At number 5, we have the only Stephen King book that is on this list, and I probably could have made an entire list of just my favorite Stephen King books in order, but I decided I was only going to let myself have one on the list just because it's so hard to choose. So the book that I have chosen as my personal favorite Stephen King book is going to be The Shining. The Shining is the story of a man named Jack who takes a winter caretaker job at a closed for the winter lodge called the Overlook Lodge, and exactly what is wrong and going on at this place where he is trapped by the snow and the winter weather for many, many months along with his family. And it is an amazing portrayal of a man who's losing his mind. It is about a hotel that is actually kind of its own character and the things that happened there and the people that were there. It is, you notice the theme here that I love a haunted house story. It is such a great haunted house story, haunted hotel story. It is absolutely terrifying, or at least I thought it was when I read it. This is another one that has several adaptations. Famously, Stephen King himself hates the Stanley Kubrick film. I really like the movie, but I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion. But the book's great. The book is better. I recommend the book super highly. It is my favorite Stephen King novel, at least in terms of his horror novels. And if you've never read any Stephen King, do I think you should start there? I think it's not a bad one to start with. It's actually fairly accessible, and I think it will all make sense to you as you read it. And I don't know. The sense of isolation, the sense of being trapped somewhere by the snow and being on your own is just all things that I find very scary. So I think it's really fantastic, and I would recommend it. At number 4, we have a repeat author, and it's because she is one of my favorite authors, and I have read so many of her books lately, and the book is The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This is such an interesting horror novel because it's also very, very funny. And I find that that's something that really works for me. This is a story of a young woman who has moved away from her town for reasons, but finds herself returning to take care of her uncle's museum of curiosities while he is in the hospital recovering from an injury, and of the portal to another world that she discovers is in there. I would say that this book is very, very inspired by H.P. Lovecraft and his creations. He's directly name-checked within the book. It's very obvious what the influence is. I thought it was really good. She has a neighbor who goes into the other world with her, who I just loved as a character, and I found it very scary. And I would say that I think this is the scariest of T. Kingfisher's horror books, but I would still put it at kind of I'm a little bit of a I don't really want to be scared that much kind of level in terms of horror novels. But I think that if you've enjoyed T. Kingfisher's fantasy books, I think that this would be an easy way to get into some scary reading for fall, because this is going to be similar to that same style that you've already enjoyed, but just with a few more creepy things layered on top. The other world is super eerie and scary, and I really, really enjoyed it. Now we are to my top 3 horror novels, and we are going to start with my favorite Grady Hendrix book, which is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. That's quite the title. And I think the title tells you what you're going to get, because that's what it's about. Grady Hendrix is an author that is very good at injecting humor. He's also really great at writing female characters. And in this book, we are following women who are part of a book club in the South in, I believe it's the 1980s. And what happens when a mysterious stranger comes to town who's oddly charismatic and pale, shall we say. This book is about the horror and it's about the vampires, but even more than that, it's about what life was like for women in the South in this time period. And as someone who, I was a little girl in the South in the 1980s, it feels extremely accurate to what my own mother experienced. And I love that. It's not just scary, it's also got some social commentary along with it that I think is really good. And it's hilarious. And in my opinion, this is his best book. I have others that I really enjoy, none that I really haven't enjoyed, but this is by far the best one. It's 5 stars and a really different book. Again, something a little off the beaten path for you to read if you're looking for something creepy this fall. The number 2 book on my list would be number 1 in a different kind of list, because this is actually one of my favorite books of all time. But in terms of how scary it is, it's not going to quite make the top of the list. And that book is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. The Reformatory is the story of a school for African-American boys set in Florida in the 1960s and all of the haunts and ghosts and horrors that took place there. It's based on a true story, and it is definitely a horror book where it is very clear that the humans are in some ways much more horrific than the monsters and the ghosts. It's got a real emotional heart to it. It's a long book, but I never felt like it was too long. We are following the story of one boy who is unjustly sentenced to this school. And also outside of the school, we are following his sister who is frantically trying to get him out. So we see the injustice of the system in the American South in that time period, and we combine it with all of the injustices going on within this place, which is also very, very haunted. And this book is hard-hitting on so many levels. It's one that I recommend, especially if you don't know anything about that period in our history. If you don't know anything about the reform schools for boys, I think this would be something that's going to really touch you. And it really touched me. And it's a book that I have recommended over and over and over again to people who have loved it. And it's also quite unsettling and scary. So I would highly recommend that you check this one out. If you're looking for something maybe a little bit more literary to read, I wouldn't say this is straight horror. I would say it's kind of a mixture of the two, but it's just fantastic. And now we have my number 1 horror book, and it has to be a haunted house story, and it has to be The September House by Carissa Orlando. The September House is such an interesting take on the haunted house genre. And that's primarily because it is taking the tropes that we have, the familiar ideas that we have of the haunted house and the people who are trapped there trying to escape. And it says, what if they knew it was haunted? And they said, you know what? This is my house. I'm not leaving. And so they stay. And so it is the story of a married couple who buy this house, and it becomes very clear that all year, but especially in the month of September, things are wrong. and they stay. And what are the secrets that the house is holding, and what are the secrets that these people might be holding? And it's just so fantastic. It is the best haunted house story I've ever read. By far, it is terrifying. It is not one to read if you are not okay with a little bit of over-the-top death and gore and things like that, but such a good book. So scary. Highly recommended. Yeah, I'm thinking right now about how it kept me up for days. I live in an old house, so all these books just really get to me sometimes because, I mean, there have been people living in my house for the past 140 years. So, although it's not haunted, I don't think. So there you have it, my top 10 horror books of all time. I would love if you would leave me a comment and let me know your favorite scary books, because I would love to get some more for my TBR. I'm always looking for more books to read, especially more scary books at this time of year. And if you're feeling quiet, leave me the ghost emoji, because as you can see, I am ready for fall. I have my fall attire on and I have my ghost sweater, so leave me a ghost. And with that, I hope you have a fantastic day. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.